Hey, what's up team, and welcome to the 5-minute guide for Holy Paladin, and specifically the Glimmer Paladin. The Glimmer Paladin is an extremely unique and very fun healer which brings forth a Crusader's might to grant it increased healing potential. It isn't afraid to be in the fray, attacking its foes while healing its allies, and as a result, it gets to combine melee and healing in an amazing way. It's one of my favourite specs in the game right now. If you're looking for a true melee healer, look no further than the Glimmer Pally. There is one primary talent build for the Glimmer Pally, with a single talent changing up in the final row when changing between dungeon and raid healing. In raids we want to be taking Divine Purpose for those extra holy shocks and Light of Dawns, giving us better raid coverage for Glimmer. And in dungeons, Beacon of Virtue helps us provide the party with reliable and on-demand 5-man healing with a short cooldown. The Glimmer Pally is an amazing spec, and it's very popular among Holy Paladins right now. Do however keep in mind that it does require at least 2 Glimmer of Light azerite traits, which it revolves around. Let me know if you guys want me to do a video on the standard Holy Paladin healing build. Anyway, let's get into this thing. Glimmer of Light causes Holy Shock to apply a buff to anyone you use it on for 30 seconds, both enemy or ally. This buff will cause a burst of healing or damage to the target whenever you use Holy Shock, and you can apply it to as many targets as you can Holy Shock in 30 seconds. So you can start to see how this spec works and why it's so strong. The general idea of Glimmer Paladin is to get a Glimmer of Light buff on as many targets as possible, of course prioritizing allies over enemies. In dungeons this is easy. In raids you won't be able to get it on everyone if you have more than 10 people, but the general rule is the more the better. To get all these holy shocks out we need to make use of our row 1 talent, Crusader's Might, which causes our Crusader Strike to lower the cooldown of our holy shock by 1.5 seconds. To summarise the core idea of the build we can put it like this. Glimmer Paladin revolves around getting as many Glimmer of Light buffs out as possible. We achieve this through Holy Shocking. We refresh Holy Shock with Crusader Strike. This is why haste is so good for Glimmer Paladins, because more haste means more Crusader Strike, which means more Holy Shocks, which means more Glimmer buffs. It can get pretty insane in a raid environment when you have 10 to 15 buffs up at once. The thing that makes this build so powerful is how many Holy Shocks you can get out throughout a fight if you play well, and the fact that the entire rotation is mana neutral if you only cast Holy Shock and Light of Dawn, which is actually more than enough healing and can be maintained if you are hitting the boss. Now let's take some time to go over each of our abilities and when we want to use them. Firstly, Holy Shock. This is going to be our primary heal as the Glimmer Paladin. We want to use it on cooldown, preferably on a target that doesn't have the Glimmer buff already. But don't worry too much about spreading the buff around if you know damage isn't coming anytime soon. The purpose of the Glimmer buff is to provide us with blanket healing through that single target heal. Remember that this thing will spread the buff even if it doesn't do any healing, so if you know damage isn't coming, it's viable to be casting it on people that are full health for the purpose of spreading the buff. Light of Dawn. This is our secondary heal as Glimmer Paladin and should be used as close to cooldown as possible, as long as people are taking damage and need healing. This doesn't have the same buff spreading power as Holy Shock, so there's no real point to casting it if everyone's already full. Prioritize using Holy Shock over this. Crusader Strike is also very important for Glimmer Pally, as it lowers the cooldown of our Holy Shock. Press it if Holy Shock is more than 1.5 seconds off becoming available, and don't let it cap charges. This ability is the reason that it's very important that the Glimmer Pally remains in melee, hitting the boss as much of the time as possible. It will give you so many more Holy Shocks, and as a result, so many more Glimmer buffs. Flash of Light. Use this if we have an Infusion of Light proc, and Holy Shock, Crusader Strike, and Light of Dawn are on cooldown. Holy Light. Use this if all of those are on cooldown, and if you don't have an Infusion of Light proc. Light of the Martyr. Generally don't use this much. If you're in serious need of burst healing, put it at the end of a Flash of Light or Holy Light cast. Now let's go over the general strategy for healing as Glimmer Paladin. And note that this is pretty much the same for dungeons and raids. While healing, we want to always be attacking the boss or enemy in melee, casting Crusader Strike while Holy Shock is on cooldown. Otherwise, be Holy Shocking unique targets to spread the buff, making a judgment call on whether or not it's worth to Holy Shock a full health target, noting that you will struggle to yourself with these abilities. When both are on cooldown, use Light of Dawn for group healing and Flash of Light or Holy Light for single target healing, depending on whether or not you have an Infusion of Light proc from Holy Shock. Use Beacon of Virtue in dungeons when burst group healing is required. Rotate Avenging Wrath and Holy Avenger to increase the amount of healing you can do and the amount of Glimmer buffs you can get out, remembering that you can preemptively apply buffs if you know damage is coming soon. Anyway team, that has been the Glimmer Paladin, a spec that may not be around forever, so if you're interested in trying it, get that haste, get those traits, and get going. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to chuck me a sub and leave a comment down below. If you want to say hi, I'm live 6 nights a week over on Twitch. I'll leave a link below. I hope this guide was helpful, and I will see you in the next one.